Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Storypath English. I hope you are having a peaceful day. Today, I want to tell you a very special story. It is a story about something sweet, something rich, and something that makes millions of people smile every single day. You might have eaten some today. You might have given some to someone you love. Or maybe you are saving it for later, hidden in a drawer like a secret treasure. Can you imagine a world without chocolate? Can you imagine never tasting something sweet and melting on your tongue? Can you imagine celebrating birthdays, holidays, or special moments without this delicious treat? For most of human history, this was exactly the case. Chocolate did not always exist, at least not in the form we know today. It started as something completely different, a bitter drink, a sacred medicine, and even a form of money. It was loved by emperors, banned by churches, and fought over by empires. Its journey from the rainforests of Central America to the candy aisles of your local store is one of the strangest and sweetest stories in human history. So today, let's go back in time. Let's discover how one small bean from a tropical tree became the world's favorite sweet. This is not just a story about chocolate. It is a story about desire, invention, and a human love for sweetness. If you enjoy learning English through stories like this, please subscribe to Storypath English. Your subscription helps us bring you more beautiful stories for your English journey. Before chocolate came into the world, the people of ancient Mesoamerica, the region that is now Mexico and Central America, lived very differently than we do. They had corn, beans, and squash. They had chili peppers and tomatoes, but they did not have sugar. They did not have milk. And they did not have sweet treats like cookies or cakes. Deep in the tropical rainforests, there grew a strange tree. It had large pods growing directly from its trunk and branches. Inside each pod were about 30 to 40 seeds, surrounded by sweet white pulp. The tree was called Theobroma cacao. In Greek, this name means food of the gods. The first people to discover the magic of this tree were the Olmecs, one of the earliest civilizations in the Americas. They lived more than 3,000 years ago. We do not know exactly how they used cacao, but we know they passed their knowledge to the Maya, who came after them. The Maya loved cacao. They called it cacao. For them, it was not just food. It was sacred. It was a gift from the gods. The Maya discovered that if you took the seeds from the pods, fermented them, dried them, roasted them, and then ground them into a paste, you could mix this paste with water and create a special drink. But this drink was nothing like the hot chocolate we know today. It was bitter. It was spicy. It was often mixed with chili peppers, cornmeal, and other ingredients. And it was always served cold. The Maya believed that cacao had spiritual powers. They used it in religious ceremonies. They gave it to brides and grooms at weddings. They even buried their dead with jars of chocolate drink to take with them to the next world. Cacao was so valuable that the Maya used it as money. You could buy a rabbit for 10 cacao beans. You could buy a slave for 100 beans. You could buy services from workers and pay them in beans. People would sometimes try to cheat by emptying the shells and filling them with dirt. Even then, chocolate crime existed. For centuries, the Maya kept the secrets of cacao. They grew it in their gardens. They traded it with neighboring peoples. They wrote about it in their books. But they never imagined that one day this bitter bean would travel across the ocean and conquer the world. The next great chapter in the story of chocolate begins with a powerful empire, the Aztecs. By the 1400s, the Aztecs had become the dominant power in central Mexico. They built a great capital city called Tenochtitlan, where Mexico City stands today. It was a city of canals, pyramids, and markets filled with goods from all over the empire. The Aztecs could not grow cacao in their own land. It was too dry and too high. They had to get it from the lowland rainforests, through trade or through conquest. This made cacao even more valuable. It became a symbol of wealth and power. Only the rich and noble could afford to drink it regularly. Common people could only enjoy it on special occasions. The Aztec emperor drank chocolate from golden cups. He had thousands of jars of cacao beans stored in his palaces. When he entertained guests, he served them chocolate in elaborate ceremonies. It was a sign of his greatness. The Aztecs, like the Maya, believed cacao was a gift from the gods. They had a god of cacao, and they made offerings to him. One of their legends told of a god who was killed by other gods. From his blood, they said, the first cacao tree grew. This shows how deeply chocolate was connected to their spiritual beliefs. The most famous Aztec ruler was Moctezuma II. According to Spanish accounts, he drank large amounts of chocolate every day. Some stories say he drank 50 cups a day. He liked his chocolate mixed with vanilla, honey, and other spices, but never sugar. Sugar did not exist in the Americas yet. One Spanish priest who saw Moctezuma drinking chocolate wrote, "He took it from time to time out of golden cups." They said it gave him power over women. Whether this was true or not, it shows that even then, chocolate was associated with desire and pleasure. The Aztecs also used cacao beans as money, just like the Maya. In the great market of Tlatelolco, you could buy almost anything with cacao beans: food, cloth, tools, even slaves. The beans were counted carefully. People carried them in bags and used them like coins. But the world of the Aztecs was about to change forever. Strange men were coming from across the sea, men with white skin, metal armor, and weapons that spat fire. Men who had never seen chocolate before and had no idea what treasure they were about to discover. In 1519, a Spanish explorer named Hernán Cortés landed on the coast of Mexico. He came with ships, horses, and soldiers. He was looking for gold, glory, and new lands for Spain. When Cortés and his men arrived in Tenochtitlan, Moctezuma welcomed them as guests. He gave them gifts of gold, food, and drink. Among these gifts was a strange, bitter beverage served in golden cups. The Spaniards did not like it. One of them wrote, "This drink was the worst thing we ever tasted. It was bitter and had an odd flavor." But they noticed something interesting. The Aztecs seemed to treasure this drink above almost everything else. They used the beans as money. They served it to their nobles. They believed it gave them strength and wisdom. Cortés was a clever man. He realized that wherever people valued something, there was opportunity. He wrote to the King of Spain, "This bean called cacao is very valuable. The natives use it as money. Perhaps we can grow it and sell it." But Cortés had bigger plans. Within 2 years, he had captured Tenochtitlan and destroyed the Aztec Empire. Moctezuma was dead. The great city lay in ruins, and the cacao trees of the conquered lands now belonged to Spain. The Spanish brought cacao beans back to Europe. At first, no one knew what to do with them. The bitter drink did not appeal to Spanish tastes. But then, someone had a brilliant idea. What if they added sugar? What if they served it hot instead of cold? Sugar was already known in Europe. It came from sugarcane, which was grown on islands off the coast of Africa. When the Spanish mixed sugar with cacao and heated it, something magical happened. The bitter drink became sweet. The harsh flavor softened. It was still strange, but it was becoming more pleasant. For decades, the Spanish kept chocolate a secret. They did not tell other Europeans how to make it. They grew cacao in their colonies. They brought it back to Spain. They served it in the royal court. It became a drink for the rich and powerful. To drink chocolate was to show you were sophisticated and wealthy. The Spanish also added new ingredients. They discovered that vanilla, which also came from Mexico, went beautifully with chocolate. They added cinnamon and other spices. They sometimes thickened it with corn or flavored it with flowers. Chocolate was becoming more and more delicious. But one ingredient was still missing, an ingredient that would transform chocolate forever. That ingredient was milk. From Spain, chocolate slowly spread across Europe. It traveled to Italy, brought by Catholic priests and merchants. It traveled to France when the Spanish princess Anne of Austria married the French king Louis XIII. She brought her love of chocolate with her to the French court. In France, chocolate became fashionable. The rich and noble drank it in their palaces. They served it in fancy cups. They added milk to make it creamier and smoother. The French, always lovers of good food, embraced chocolate with enthusiasm. Soon chocolate houses began to appear in London, just like coffee houses. These were places where people could gather, drink chocolate, and talk. Chocolate was expensive, so only the wealthy could afford to go, but it was becoming more popular every year. In the 1600s, the Catholic Church debated whether chocolate was allowed during fasting periods. Some priests said it was just a drink, so it was fine. Others said it was too much like food. The debate continued for years. Finally, Pope Alexander VII decided that chocolate did not break the fast. This made it even more popular among religious Europeans. By the 1700s, chocolate was known all over Europe, but it was still a drink, it was still expensive, and it was still made by hand in small batches. No one had yet imagined that chocolate could become a solid bar, something you could hold in your hand and eat. That change would come with the Industrial Revolution. The 1800s changed everything for chocolate. New machines, new processes, and new ideas transformed it from a drink for the rich into a treat for everyone. The first big change happened in Holland. In 1828, a Dutch chemist named Conrad Johannes van Houten invented a new machine. This machine could press the fat out of roasted cacao beans. The fat was called cocoa butter. What remained was a dry powder. This powder was easier to mix with water or milk. It was also cheaper to produce. Van Houten also treated his powder with alkaline salts. This made it darker and less bitter. It also made it mix more easily with liquids. We still use this process today. It is called Dutch processing. Now, chocolate could be made more easily and more consistently. The price began to fall. More people could afford it. The next big change happened in England. In 1847, a company called Fry's made the first solid chocolate bar. They mixed cocoa powder, cocoa butter, and sugar together. They pressed it into a mold. For the first time in history, people could eat chocolate instead of drinking it. It was a revolution. Other companies quickly followed. In Switzerland, a man named Daniel Peter had an idea. He lived next to a company that made baby food. The company was run by his friend, Henri Nestlé. Nestlé had invented a way to make powdered milk. Peter wondered, what if you mix this powdered milk with chocolate? The result was the first milk chocolate. It was smoother, creamier, and sweeter than anything before. Another Swiss chocolatier, Rodolphe Lindt, invented a machine called the conch. This machine mixed and stirred chocolate for hours or even days. It made the chocolate incredibly smooth. It melted on the tongue. This process, called conching, is still used today to make fine chocolate. By the late 1800s, chocolate was becoming a business. Companies like Cadbury in England, Hershey in America, and Lindt in Switzerland began to produce chocolate on a large scale. They used machines. They hired workers. They advertised in newspapers. Chocolate was no longer a secret of kings. It was becoming a treat for everyone. But this growth came with a price. Much of the cacao was grown by poor farmers in Africa and Latin America. They were paid very little. The work was hard. The trees were difficult to grow. And the farmers who grew the beans could rarely afford to eat the chocolate made from them. This inequality continues to this day. By the 1900s, chocolate had become a global phenomenon. 2 world wars helped spread it even further. Soldiers received chocolate in their rations. It gave them energy. It reminded them of home. When they returned from war, they brought their love of chocolate with them. In America, companies like Hershey and Mars created new kinds of chocolate. Hershey's Kisses, introduced in 1907, became an American icon. M&M's, invented in 1941, were designed to be easy to carry and resistant to melting. They became popular with soldiers, and later, with everyone. In Europe, fine chocolatiers continued to make high-quality chocolate. Belgium became famous for its pralines chocolates filled with cream, nuts, or other sweets. Switzerland maintained its reputation for smooth, creamy milk chocolate. France developed a tradition of elegant chocolate desserts and confections. In the 1980s and 1990s, a new trend began. People started to care more about where their chocolate came from. They wanted to know that the farmers were treated fairly. They wanted chocolate that was organic or sustainable or ethically produced. This movement, called fair trade, helped improve conditions for some cacao farmers. Today, the world eats more than 7 million tons of chocolate every year. That is about $700 billion worth of chocolate. It is one of the most popular foods on Earth. But making chocolate is still hard work. It takes about 400 cacao beans to make just 1 pound of chocolate. Each bean must be harvested by hand, fermented, dried, roasted, and processed. Millions of farmers, mostly in West Africa, depend on cacao for their living. Countries like Ivory Coast and Ghana produce more than half of the world's cacao. And still, most of these farmers have never tasted the fine chocolates made from their beans. They cannot afford them. They are too expensive. The journey of chocolate, from bitter bean to sweet treat, is also a journey of inequality. Why do we love chocolate so much? Scientists have studied this question. They have found that chocolate contains hundreds of chemical compounds. Some of them affect our brains in interesting ways. Chocolate contains a small amount of caffeine, which gives us energy. It contains theobromine, a mild stimulant that is also found in tea. It contains anandamide, a chemical that can create feelings of happiness. It contains phenylethylamine, which is sometimes called the love drug, because it increases when people fall in love. But perhaps the most important thing about chocolate is simply that it tastes good. It is sweet. It is rich. It melts at body temperature, so it dissolves on your tongue in a way that feels wonderful. It combines fat and sugar, a combination that our brains are wired to love. Chocolate also has emotional meaning. We give it to people we love on Valentine's Day. We eat it when we are sad, to comfort ourselves. We celebrate with it. We reward ourselves with it. It is connected to pleasure, to love, to happiness. In many cultures, chocolate is also connected to childhood. The first time you tasted chocolate, you probably smiled. It is one of those tastes that stays with you forever. Today, chocolate exists in countless forms. There are dark chocolates with high percentages of cacao, bitter and intense. There are milk chocolates, sweet and creamy. There are white chocolates, which technically are not chocolate at all because they contain no cocoa solids, only cocoa butter, sugar, and milk. There are chocolate bars filled with nuts, caramel, fruit, or crispy rice. There are chocolate truffles, chocolate mousse, chocolate cake, chocolate ice cream. There are chocolate drinks, hot and cold. There is chocolate in cookies, in cereals, in spreads like Nutella. There is even chocolate on meat in some Mexican dishes, a tradition that goes back to the Aztecs. Chocolate is everywhere. It is in almost every grocery store, every convenience store, every movie theater. You can buy it for a few cents or for hundreds of dollars, depending on the quality. It is one of the most democratic foods in the world, available to rich and poor alike. And yet, for all its variety, chocolate is still made from the same thing: the beans of the cacao tree, first discovered by ancient peoples in the rainforests of Central America. Every piece of chocolate, no matter how fancy, connects us to that long history. The story of chocolate is not just a story about food. It is a story about human desire. We wanted sweetness, so we added sugar. We wanted creaminess, so we added milk. We wanted convenience, so we invented machines. We wanted pleasure, so we made it available to everyone. It is also a story about discovery. The Maya and Aztecs discovered the magic of cacao. The Spanish discovered how to make it sweet. The Swiss discovered how to make it smooth. Each generation added something new. It is also a story about inequality. The people who grow cacao are still poor. The people who eat chocolate are often rich. This is a problem we have not yet solved, but it is also a story about connection. When you eat a piece of chocolate, you are connected to farmers in West Africa, to workers in factories, to chocolatiers in Europe, to ancient peoples in Mexico. You are part of a chain that stretches across time and space. The writer Roald Dahl, who loved chocolate, once wrote, "There is something about chocolate that is almost magical." He was right. Chocolate has a power to make us happy, to comfort us, to bring us together. It is more than just food. It is a little piece of joy. Today, when you unwrap a piece of chocolate, when you let it melt on your tongue, when you share it with someone you love, remember this long journey. Remember the dancing gods of the Maya. Remember the golden cups of Moctezuma. Remember the Spanish priests who added sugar. Remember the Swiss inventors who made it smooth. Remember the farmers who grew the beans. Remember all the hands that touched it before it reached yours. You are holding thousands of years of history in your hand. You are tasting the labor of millions of people. You are experiencing one of the greatest inventions in human history, an invention that was never planned, never designed, but grew slowly over centuries, shaped by curiosity, by desire, by accident, and by love. The story of chocolate is also the story of us, our longing for sweetness, our love of pleasure, our endless creativity, our willingness to try new things, our ability to take something simple, a bean from a tree, and turn it into something magical. Thank you for listening to this story today on Storypath English. I hope you enjoyed learning about the amazing history of chocolate. I hope it helped you with your English. If you liked this story, please give it a like. If you want to hear more stories about food, history, and the world around us, please subscribe to Storypath English. Your support helps us create more content for your English learning journey. And if you have ideas for other stories you want to hear, about tea, about bread, about pizza, about anything at all, please leave a comment below. I would love to know which topics help you learn best. Until next time, my friends, keep learning, keep exploring, and remember, every bite of chocolate contains a story, just like every word of English contains a world. Goodbye for now.